Hello and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. I'm one of your guest hosts, Dan Hall, and with me is Dave Jinks, my other compatriot in crime. And Dave, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing well, Dan. Hopefully
Good.
you are well as well, and hopefully our guest Marty is doing well. She always looks like she's doing well. She's always got a smile on her face and has great stories and accounts to share with us. So we're looking forward to that, definitely.
Yeah, I always like to do repeat shows because we have such great guests, but the guest we have tonight not only is a great guest, but she lives in a very unusual place, and I'm always intrigued by where she lives. So, Marty McCray, we've had you on our show before. How are things down there along the Columbia River?
They're good. They're very good, very good. Things are quiet right now. I mean, relatively speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
maybe
cold,
that. Yeah.
cold, really cold. It's 10 degrees today.
Oh,
Do you have
and
snow?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh,
It
yeah. Mm.
just snowed a big snow this last few days. Yeah.
Mm.
Not super deep, but it's just so cold.
I always
Uh,
forget how truly winter-like it is when you go east from where we are. We're in Olympia, Washington, of course, Dan and I, and all you have to do is go towards the mountains or over the mountains, and you might as well be in New York or Minneapolis or somewhere because it's real winters on that
Yeah.
side of the mountains. Over here, we're sheltered a bit, although we had snow yesterday. It was, you wouldn't really call it snow. It was flurries, I guess, and it stuck a little bit, but how much snow do you have over there? Are you down
Not,
there?
not a lot. Like maybe a couple inches. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a heavy winter. I was snowed in here because I'm on a mountain and my driveway is about 3/4 of a mile, twisty turny, a high
Yeah.
road. And so I do get snowed in easily. I'm snowed in right now. And yeah, so that's a feature of living here that's interesting. I saw a coyote this morning, maybe 75 feet away. And that was I'm glad I have Wolfie. I have my German Shepherd, and we were
So
out.
what city technically are you? You don't have to tell your address or anything, but technically,
It's
where are you?
I'm at Lyle, Washington. So and I'm not in the city of Lyle. We're way out in the country, and this area is known as High Prairie. So it's steep up to come up to High Prairie, and then I'm up even further. Yeah, on
What's the nearest city that people will have heard of? Maybe I should ask.
oh oh not Lyle.
Not Lyle, no.
Clickatack County, and if where I go grocery shopping is either in the Dalles, Oregon, or Hood River, Oregon. And sometimes I go to Goldendale, but I don't know if people have heard of that either.
Mhm.
So
Dallas is right on the border, right?
yeah, it's right on the river. And if you went over the back of my mountain, because I've got a mountain behind me here, I'm up on a mountain, and then there's the tippy top behind me.
Mhm.
Down the other side, you'd be at the Dalles Dam. So it's if I could drive right over, it's like 5 minutes away, but I can't. I have to drive down my hill, around a big highway, down to Lyle, and then circle back to the Dells. So yeah, nothing's really convenient here. That's
Little
it's
roundabout, which means you're kind of out in an area that's not populated, that
very rural. Yeah.
may be more conducive to uh, producing some strange phenomena, although the strange phenomena seem to follow you wherever you go. So
It's true. Yeah.
that seems to be a given at this point, at least from what we know about you, and you've got a lot of strange things to talk about. So let's jump into something. I know Dan has a special I was going to say special feeling, a special kinship with Sasquatch and Bigfoot, whichever term you prefer. And that's always a great place to start on this show. I want to hear what your newest adventures are with
Yeah.
that creature.
Yeah. Uh,
But I'll go where Dan wants to go at first. What do you think, Dan?
well, let's go there.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I had, I've had about a 4-year relationship here with them. And that I'd say in the beginning, I was so excited. I was so like, are you kidding me? I mean, I was just hyped, like, what? I never thought that something like that would happen, that I would be witness to, that I would be participating in, that I would develop a relationship with Sasquatch. And that's all happened since I've lived here. I've had, a relationship in particular with two, a young man who's about 13, and then his uncle, who I call Russell, just because he rustles around. So
Russell with a T.
yeah, exactly. And he's so tall. He's about 10 feet tall, at least 10 feet tall, Russell. But his nephew is more like maybe 6'2", 6'3". And he's a 14-year-old, but now, gosh, he's got to be 15 or 16 now. I met him when he was 13, and that's years ago. So maybe he's 17. I've only seen him twice physically. I've seen Russell several times around here physically, but it's just a flash and then they're gone. And I've asked them to show themselves to me. And so those two in particular have, because I asked, because I was getting really frustrated going, it makes you feel crazy when you can you can hear, telepathically communicate with those two. You hear them all night long with their activities. I've been touched, poked, had physical experiences with them, but yet while that was happening, not seeing them physically, just feeling them and having very supernatural experiences around that. So that's how it kind of started out. And it was terrifying. I was really scared. And also in the beginning, the phenomenon that was happening, this is a few years ago now, I kept calling, because I live here alone. And so I kept calling the sheriff, because I thought I had some teenagers, like a gang of unruly teens that were messing with me, because they were hitting the house at night, pine cones being thrown at me in the daytime, rocks being thrown, not at me. It's all very playful, but kind of like how teenage boys are like, like, we're trying to get your attention, haha. Like, oh, that's just funny. So it was annoying and it was unnerving. And I really thought it was humans, because at nighttime I would hear talking, just like you hear, it sounded like there was a group of guys out there talking. And so I'd look out my window like, I'm going to catch them, and nothing. Never saw anything, but they would still be talking right under my window. And they laugh. They thought that was funny. And so it was like, oh, okay, I've not experienced this. But one night, where it all kind of started was in June of, I think it was 17 or 18, not certain. And I had one of them, the young man, was standing under my window, and maybe I've told you this story before. He coughed, and he was going like that, clearing his throat, because I do that. And that's how I figured out. I go, that sounds like my mom. Why is my mom outside my window clearing her throat? But everyone says I sound like my mom. So I go, they mimic. They're dead on mimics. And I'm like, oh my God, he's imitating me. That's what I sound like. I'm like, okay, that's good. And so I look and I go, I'm going to get up. I said it out loud. I'm going to get up. I'm going to look outside. The windows were all open. It was a hot summer night. And I had my air conditioning unit in the window on. And I said, I'm going to get up and look, and he won't be there. So what is the point of this? What are you doing? And he's like, like, come on, man. And so I got up and I looked, and I had to stand up on my bed because the windows are really tall and they're sort of high. So I'm standing in the bed looking out, and I see what he wants. And we have motion sensor lights on. They're all on. And out in the field there, a big field surrounded by trees. And that was where they gather often, have their meetings. And I have a watering trough out there for deer. So I see I physically see, it looked like holograms of Sasquatches. It like semi-transparent. You know what a hologram looks like. You can kind of tell, oh, that's a hologram. But it was them. And there was 17. I started counting. I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. And I had my cell phone there. I'm like, oh, I could film it because my friend Nancy is always telling me you got to film. It didn't happen unless you took the picture. I'm like, I never think of it. I'm always just like, what? And so there's my phone. It's on. I could take a picture. I'm like, yes. So I grabbed the phone and I'm held it up and I was videoing. And they were doing a ceremony. They were walking around the trough, and you could hear drums beating and thumping. Sounded like native drums, and like boom, 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 boom. And they're walking in step, like, and it looked like, I'm like, where have I seen that before? Oh, it looks like a powwow, because they're walking in a counterclockwise circle around the watering trough. And it was a ceremony. And I just knew it. And like, and as they were coming out of the woods in line, one by one, they were passing a leader. And she was really tall. And it was female. And she had red eyes. And she turned and looked at me. And it's about a football field length away that I'm looking out the window. So not super close, but close enough I could see. And I'm filming. I show like, hi, I got the camera. I was terrified. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe I know that he got me to see that. And what led up to this was I'd been meditating daily, and I'd been communing and communicating with that young man. And he was the guy who's like, so it's like, because I kept asking, I want to see you. I want to see you guys. How come you won't show yourselves to me? Because it makes me feel crazy. Like, am I just imagining all this? You live alone in a mountain and you're like, I don't know. I mean, this is how people go nuts. So I'm very, I was kept asking, I want to see you. I want to see you. And so that's what kind of led to this. And so I'm showing her the camera, like, hey, I got the camera. I'm watching it because I want to be above board. And instantly she looked at me across, 100 feet away, like, oh, no, no, no. And the camera it flew out of my hand, smacked the wall, fell down. And at the same time, all the electricity in the house went out. I mean, the air conditioning goes, boo, and all the lights went, boo. And I was like, oh. And I thought, well, there goes my phone. That's ruined. And so I was just standing there in the dark going, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, I made him mad. I shouldn't have done that. And then a couple seconds later, ooh, back on, and they're gone. They're just gone. So I screwed that one up. And afterwards, I had a meeting with the young man, Tavor is his name. And I asked him, well, did I make everyone mad? Because I was trying to film. You can't do that. You can't take pictures. And he said, it's my fault. I should have told you. I'm like, well, I should have known. I'm kind of heard that about you guys. That's why I was trying to be above board. And anyway, that's the first thing, the big thing that happened. And that was years ago. But up until that point, I kept calling the sheriff. And I mean, 2 a.m, 3 a.m, the guys had come out there. And I was so embarrassed because I'm like, there's lights in the trees. There's orbs. Like, I was thinking that it was people with flashlights going around in the trees, but it wasn't. It was orbs. I was seeing physical, like basketball size shape of orbs. And they'd come in close to the house, and then they'd go away, and they'd go traveling through the trees. And then you'd hear them talking, and you hear also when they come through, I believe this is what's happening. There's a giant crack. I mean, it just sounds like a log breaking. And it actually sounds electrical too, but that's I believe portals opening when they come in, because I'd hear the cracks. I'm hearing everything. I've also, and so then I'd call the sheriff. They'd come, and I'd go, okay, so how many times? 5 times. how many times can I have you guys out and you don't start charging me? And they were really nice. And they're like, they finally go, this guy who'd been out there a few times, he goes, ma'am, do you think this place is haunted? Or do you think it's Sasquatch? The deputy said that to me. I go, I wasn't going to say Sasquatch. I go, but I'm starting to think it's Sasquatch. And he said, yeah, that it happens out here. It happens. And they are freaked out. They go, every time we come here. I said, why did you say that? Because everywhere I go, pretty much is I bring out the haunted because I am a medium and I am a psychic. And so the spirits that may be attached to the land or the physical spirits that may be hanging out, they're like, oh, her, oh, okay. So they will come out. So spirit doesn't frighten me anymore at all, not at all. What frightens me, what was frightening me then is Sasquatch, because unknown. I don't know. I mean, I thought maybe they'll eat me. Maybe they're just kind of doing all this friendly stuff to lure me in, and then they're going to kill me and eat me. Or maybe I'm going to disappear in another dimension. I mean, I'm not kidding. I saw them come in and out of portals enough around here, or whatever that is, come in and out of the thin air, that I know they're doing something. I don't know how they do that. I've seen one of my dogs go in and come out of a portal. I've seen my dogs take off in that direction and they're just gone, disappear. And I'm calling and calling, nothing. And all of a sudden they show up on the other side. Hi, we've been here all along. And so high strangeness, I guess, is what you call it. Yeah. What else do you want to know?
Sounds like high strangeness. So the interesting thing, of course, about what you're saying is that these creatures that you refer to as Sasquatch, you don't see all the time. You don't physically see them. When you do, describe what you see. Describe the kind of creatures you see.
Okay, so the young man, I because I'm a psychic and a medium, I meditate daily, and I would go out in the summer and sit under a tree. I have a tree room out there that I sit in. And so the young man approached me. He started approaching me during meditation, and I could physically hear him walk up. But then when I'd see him, I didn't see him physically. I see him in my mind's eye. And because I'd go, I'm opening my eye because I could feel him. I could feel him standing right here. And I'd go, gosh, he's so strong of a presence. You'd swear if I open my eyes, he'll be right here. I would, and there'd be nothing. And so I saw him in my mind's eye, and he was blonde, fur, really yellowy, and then white tuft on his head. And he's the only guy who's like that. Like, he's albino. And a little bit of a human-y face, but more like an albino gorilla. Like a albino gorilla human mix, because the face is a little bit more human than a typical gorilla. And then my big friend, who's Russell, he's 10 feet tall, at least. And I've seen him, the way he showed himself to me the first time, which I was just thrilled. It was like the funniest thing. So funny and so cute, kind of charming. So I was in the house here like at 3:30 in the afternoon, and I'm working here on my computer, and I keep hearing, next to me, kunk, kunk, throwing rocks against the window. And that they usually in the summertime come in around 3:30 or 4. And it's like they're showing up for work. I swear. It feels, because it's very much like clockwork every day, 3:30 or 4, kunk, kunk. And so I go look, and of course nothing's there. And so I said, you know what? I can't look. I can't play games with the rock throwing and come to the window. And I know they're looking at me, but I can't see them. Ha ha, isn't that funny? So I said, unless you want to show yourself to me, I'm through with that game because I have work to do. And so instantly in the window right in front of me, I kunk, like, okay, I'm right here. So I went, okay. I opened the curtains right there. He's going, and he's super fast. It looked like cartoonishly fast. And he just goes floating by the window. His head and he's a black gorilla. That's what he looked like, a jet black fur, pointy crown, and he was sideways, and he just went so hard because it looked like a cartoon. How did he do that? At my window here, I went out and measured. I just went, I'm going out there right now. I'm brave enough because we'd had a relationship by then, talking. And so I ran out there and I got my measuring tape. Just how high is this? You know, because he was floating and his head was right in the middle of the window. So he's floating off the ground. That's how I figured he's at least 10 feet tall, if not taller, because the window is 25 feet up. So that was weird. That was funny. It's like, okay, you've seen me now. Very cute.
Why do you think that sometimes these creatures are visible and sometimes they're not?
I just think it's for protection, honestly. I think it's 100%. They don't like humans. I've had some conversations with him, like, you know me, so what do you care? You know, I would prefer it if I would see you walking around. I wouldn't be, and for whatever reason, they don't. He said, it's not our way. So I'm not one of them. I think they're very tribal, of course. Here, I have tribes coming through. It's not all the same group all the time. And Russell's the only one, Russell and his nephew, the albino kid, they're the only ones who've shown themselves to me on a pretty regular basis. And they're the only ones I've communicated with telepathically. And sometimes I talk out loud and then I hear them in my head. But I don't physically hear them talking, except when they're talking to each other. And they'll be all hooting and hollering and talking at night. What I like about Russell and his group is he seems to be the leader, and they've got women and children because I've heard them. And I hear, it just seems like it's more balanced, right? It's a family group. There's women and there's kids of kind of all ages, and men too, but it's a good mix. And there's about 15 of them. And I've seen moms with babies from that tribe. You know, I just go by the time of year because they always, that group is always kind of here with the same group from like, oh, he should probably be here any minute now, like February until kind of Marchish until like next December. He'll be here. So, and then when he leaves, so it's been 2 or 3 times now. This last time he left last June. And he said, I have to go. You need to stay out of the canyon. And the way I found that out was I was wandering around the canyon because I've got all these friends that are like, take pictures. I'm out there taking pictures of tree structures that they built. And they're really crazy looking. Like they're just do weird. I'm always like, what are they doing out there? Because late at night, you can hear logging activities going on in the canyon and around my place. I go out the next day to find out what were they doing? And so I'm taking pictures of what they were doing. And my phone starts going all wonky. It's like, have you seen on Skinwalker Ranch? Their phones will physically be, and so something took over my screen and I just knew, oh, that's them. I just knew it. And I said, so what's up? You must be around here somewhere. And I felt him over there. And I said, what? I'm not taking pictures of you, clearly, because I can't see you. I'm taking pictures of the structures. And it's just for me. I'm not posting them anywhere. And he said, you need to be careful. You never come in the canyon. Why are you in the canyon? I said, because technically I own it. So I think I should be able to walk in my canyon once in a while. And he said, please don't, because I'm leaving and I can't protect you. And there are others who don't like humans the way I do. And I went, oh, great. I'm like, well, that's creepy and scary. And then he was gone pretty quickly after. He said, just be careful, stay out of the canyon. You should be fine. I'm thinking, well, okay, that's a little ominous. And then no kidding, that summer, I had carpenters and plumbers and electricians coming and going because I did 2 bathroom remodels this last summer. And they did not like that. They did not like that. And it felt to me a gang of young men. And it's just such a different energy because they're just they're troublemakers. And if we left any tools out or we left any supplies around, they'd take them, and they were making, I have pictures of this. They were stacking boxes because we had a ton of cardboard boxes, from the sinks because we just gutted everything and then redid it. And so I have all kinds of pictures of, like, every morning my contractor would arrive and he'd go, so did they leave a big statue this time? Because they were stacking the boxes in funny, and they made it in formations, and they made it so that it was like a signal, like, don't go past the end of these boxes. They kept blocking off the canyon with boxes. I'm like, okay, that's funny. And I just thought, that's funny, whatever. But they would also pee on the boxes, and they also peed on my truck.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, not funny, not cute. I was kind of annoyed. And it was always like, you could hear him like at night laughing and poking around. And, I'm talking way too much, but if you guys.
Well, you brought up some pee,
Yeah.
Dan is too polite to come right out and say it, I think, but it's like, I'm the kind of guy who wants to see the evidence.
Collect it.
I believe Marty, and I believe the probably dozens of witnesses that we have spoken with over the years. And I haven't seen a Bigfoot. I haven't communicated with one, and I know Dan sadly has not either. And he of all the people in the world wants to see one and see what his reaction is to the meeting, and he wants to communicate with one, and so I want to see something, anything. By the way you described the encounter with the attempt to take a picture, that tells me why you don't want to.
Yeah.
Obviously that's a bit of a stern warning. And so the witnesses have you all have your own reasons for not trying your absolute best, as if you are a scientist working on a research project or something. You're not trying to gain that kind of evidence. But I sure would like to see some. You would think that some Sasquatch urine could be very valuable to a scientific team. They would find something in that DNA probably.
Well, I was
very interesting. Now, I'm not saying go collect the pee here, Marty.
Yeah, no.
That's what I think of when they left evidence, grab the boxes, and
Yes.
It could be the most valuable evidence ever accumulated in the field of cryptozoology or animal kingdom in general.
So yes. So I have a dear friend, my friend Sandy. Oh, I can't say her name. She said, "Don't ever say."
Already forgot her name. Sands.
No.
Okay, yeah, it was just Cindy.
Anyway, wildlife biologist.
Yeah.
And, she's in her 70s, so she's been a wildlife biologist for the state of Washington her entire career. Very smart lady, really nice woman. And she and I, she was a client of mine, and we got to be good friends. And I started telling her my stories, and she's like, I have to come out there. I have to stay there. And so she did. And she has given me permission to tell her experiences. Having her was wonderful for me because I could point out all these things, like, what about this? What about that? Do you see this? Here's what I thought. We walked the entire property. I have 30 acres. And, but my neighbor up the hill from me has about 30 acres too. So it's about 60 acres to wander, and canyons, mountain trails, woods. And so we did, and we walked all over, and I showed her everything. And she even saw things that I did, because I'm not a biologist. I wasn't aware. Like, do you see this? Do you see that? That's not any mammal. That's, we saw all kinds of things. And then she had her own paranormal experience here, which she loved, but she was also terrified. And that made me laugh because I'm like, man, I live with this 24/7. And they have come in and out of my house. They can do whatever they want. There's no fence that would keep them out. There's no, you couldn't contain them. They come in and out. When I first knew them, I felt they were trying to intimidate me. And they were coming in and out of the house in the middle of the night at will. You would hear them walking around downstairs. All my animals were terrified in bed with me. I've got 4, 2 dogs and 2 cats, everyone on top of me in the bed upstairs going, oh my God, because they stink. They stink to high heaven. And it's, they can control the electricity too. All the lights would go up, bam, and then boo, back on, just like, ha ha, we can do that. And so you see why I kept calling the sheriff. I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, they're trying to intimidate me. I don't know what this is. It's paranormal. It's weird. Is it all them? Is it paranormal and them? At any rate, the nice thing that's happened all throughout this is that I do have that friendship with Russell. And so when he kept hitting the side of my house in the beginning years ago, and I said, stop one night, I got up my bravery and said, hi. And it was all quiet outside. And I went, why are you doing this? And do you want snacks? That's the only thing I could think of to say. I'm like, maybe they'll like me if I give them snacks. And it was silent. And then I could hear them crunch, 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 and feel the ground shakes. Stomp, stomp, stomp. I'm like, all right, well, 3 a.m, he came back and said, yes, in my head, yes, on the snacks. I'm like, okay. And then he said, this is where you'll put them. He showed me where to put them. And so that's where I've put them ever since. And so, a long story long about the physical specimens. I never even thought of that until, I'm getting used to this whole thing. I'm looking up stuff online going, I never heard of anyone doing anything like this. But there's a lot of people in the world that have quiet relationships with them and just whatever. And so I looked up, I saw, is it Dr. Melba Ketchum, I believe? She's, the Sasquatch Genome Project. And so I contacted her and said, hey, because one morning I was out there and somebody, I always leave them apples and nuts, but someone had taken the apple and the way they ate it was so human-y, like crunch, 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 but they made a perfect circle and little teeth marks all around and they went through it. And I picked it up. I'm like, oh ho. And I had my gloves on, so I didn't touch it. And I'm like, I'm going to send this in. I was so excited. And I contacted her and it took a few days for her to get back to me. And then she said, don't send food. It doesn't work. She said it's, because I said, I'm 99.9% sure this is Sasquatch DNA. This is a Sasquatch apple. And she said, we've had that before. And too many humans have probably touched that apple. And plus it's really hard to extract the DNA from an apple. It's just not the right material. She said, now if you get scat, that's something, not pee, poop. And so I have been diligently looking and searching for poo, but I don't find any that I can't recognize as other animal poo. But what they did one morning when the contractors were here is I was trying to pull, I watched Mike Patterson on his channel, Sasquatch Ontario, because I never heard of anyone else until I saw him talking about it on a show. So he said, oh, he was leaving out drawings. And so I did that. I on the cardboard that we had all out in the driveway, I'm like, well, since they're all into making statues and artwork with the cardboard, I'm going to leave out sidewalk chalk. And so then I drew me and them. I drew a picture of Marty, Sasquatch, and then a heart in the middle, like I heart Sasquatch. and on the cardboard, and I left it lying there. Oh my God. The next morning, my contractor gets there. He goes, "Did you see your picture you left?" I go, "No." He goes, "Someone took a shit on it." I go, "What?" And I ran out there, and they did. It was like someone did the scoop butt all the way across it. And I was so mad. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, these are not the guys." Clearly they're not the guys. Like Mike Patterson has his guy who's all, "Oh, I love you too." I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't get that. They took a poop and
You got the pre-teens. It
yeah,
sounds like
yeah." They're like, "Hee."
the guys that were all the poop jokes are all they think is the most hilarious thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it was cute. It was funny. But then I started telling you guys the story of this fall when my dog went missing. And what happened when Wolfie went missing, I got a German Shepherd, a rescue Shepherd this summer. Great dog, really sweet, super young. Maybe he's 2, if that. And I was working with him and training him every day, but he took off and he had the leash attached because he just broke away chasing something. Don't know what it was. I felt it was a Squatch. I just did. Because my other dogs were here and they used to chase them and play with them. They'd come back all stinky and coated, like just coated with oily, I don't know. And it's not like they rolled in something. So at any rate, he took off. I have the people here searching. I was approached standing out in the pitch black while I had a search and rescue guy in the canyon with his headlamp. I'm holding a lamp, pitch dark, pouring rain, mud, and I had a Sasquatch walk right up to me. And this is in November. So this is the time when my friend Russell had said, "Be careful about this group." And so this guy was growling, this low growl right here. And I just went, "Why are you here? I already told your friends, please help me find the dog." And he kept growling and just standing there, and his eyes were gold. I wasn't scared. I was just angry. And then he just faded away. And I went, "Okay, that was really creepy. I'm afraid he's got my dog." I just felt it. And I've learned to trust that, guys, because I am a psychic and a medium, and 9 times out of 10, I'm right. And I've had it validated by others for 10 years. I've been doing this professionally. So I don't, I trust that. I trust my psychic vibes. So I'm different maybe than a lot of people might go, "Oh, whatever, no, I know what I know." So he leaves. And then the search and rescue guy left, and we could not find my dog. And he should have been right there, and he should have been tangled up with that leash on him. But nothing, disappeared into nowhere. And so as the guy left, I started hearing, "Hoo, hoo, hoo," and that's the call. That's my Sasquatch call that they talk to each other when they're hunting like that. And it's like a fakey owl call. And I started calling back. I said, "Hoo, hoo, hoo," like, "Come in here now." And they did. They all started coming down the mountain, and I see lights in the trees, and they're all standing there. And I mean, I can feel them, and they don't come that close because I'll tell you something else. I have what's called intracranial hypertension, too much spinal fluid, because I have different autoimmune issues. So my friendly ones don't come that close to me, because the closer they come, the worse the pressure gets in my head. And so I think that's interesting that they would know that, and they stand back. And so they're standing back, and I could feel, and I was just crying. I said, "That dog is my life. I love this dog. I want my dog back. Can you find him? I feel like you know what happened." And they all went together. Ooh, ooh, all sad, the sad hoo-hoos, like, "Yeah, we know what happened, but it wasn't, you can't get mad at us." It was just like that. Like, ooh, 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 ooh. I'm hearing that all echoing all around me. And yeah. And so I just went, "Darn it. I know you know something. Please help me if you can. And so it was, whoo, whoo, like, okay, yeah, you know, and they disappeared. But that night and the next night, he was missing that night, terrible storm, all day the next day, pouring down rain all day, all night. Friday night was the worst storm we'd had in months. And we had 60-mile-an-hour gusts. I just thought, there's no way. I'm going to find him and I'll find a dead dog. And then, but we had people out searching for him. All of my neighbors showed up and came all day Friday, walked all through the canyons. And that's before they got there. I yelled at that guy and said, guess what? Everyone's walking through your canyon today. So exactly what you didn't want to have happen is happening because you took my dog. I know it. And of course, I didn't hear anything back. But at any rate, all day looking for the dog, and nothing, no trace, nothing. And it was so cold, it was bitterly cold. And then that night I hear my dog barking outside all around the house. And of course, I'm like, I'm going out. I don't care if it's pouring down rain at 3 a.m. I'm going out. And so I'm calling him and calling him. He's calling to me. He should have been right there. He wasn't. So I just knew, I felt that guy, because I didn't tell the story very well, just because the new leader came in that summer, and he was this old crusty guy, and I'd seen him around, and he wasn't afraid to show himself to me. And that creeped me out, because normally the rest of them are pretty careful. And he was all, here's my butt, here's my leg, here's me, running behind trees. And he was a big fat gray fella, and he looked scary. And that attitude of like, whatever, I don't care, it made me feel really scared. And I thought, that's the guy who has the dog. And how could I prove that? I can't prove that at all. It's just, that's what I felt, and I do trust it. But the other weird thing is this, where they found the dog, because we finally found him Saturday morning, and it was new people who joined the search. And listen, it's just like that missing 411. We had combed this whole area, walking, we had that many people were walking abreast, like systematically doing search and rescue type walks. So we had already covered 3 canyons over. And that's a long ways. It's a good 5 miles total, walking there and back. And I can't do that but all the rest of the folks did. So they had already been past this spot where they found my dog, and it was high up on the ridge that overlooks the river. It's so far up there. Normally, all the search and rescue people told me dogs don't run uphill ever, because they know, just instinct is like, go downhill. That's going to be where you'll find humans, the road, whatever, more safety. They don't run away from you uphill, unless maybe they're chasing a deer, but I know he wasn't. And so then they found him, the leash was wrapped around a barbed wire fence, and he was all shiny and new and dry, bone dry. They had searched that area 3 times previously, all day Friday. Saturday morning had already checked it. And then a couple of kids found him. And they're not kids, they're in their 20s. I'm old. Anyway, young whippersnappers, they found him, and he came right to them, but she said she walked by him and he was just dead quiet with his paws down, like he'd given up. And she said, hey, Wolfie, hey. And he went, oh, and so she brought him home, and he was like, okay, a young gal. And he looked beautiful. He did not look as if he'd spent, 2 nights and 3 days in the pouring rain, mud, storm. There was none of that. And that leash wasn't tangled up. And he hadn't tried to chew on the leash. If he'd been there, and like I said, they had already searched that area 3 times. And if you see it on a map, I posted the map on my Facebook page, where he was lost and where he was found. It's like, what? I mean, you can't get there from here, except it's really hard. It's really hard. You'd have to really try hard to get up on that ridge. You don't just easily walk up there. So that upset me. I felt like, okay, I'm moving. I don't want to be here anymore. Because, if there's that guy around, I like my Russell. We have snacks. I was still giving snacks. But I just felt like, screw you guys. I don't want to give you any more snacks. You did that. I knew they did it. And it wasn't the guys, it was the leader who did it. And I know that they don't, the vibe that I got was they don't like me being so familiar. They don't like me talking about it. They don't, but I felt so intimidated and I was very angry about it. So, yeah, there's so many more stories. I had 3 sets of people come out here in October, and each time the Squatches got progressively madder and angrier. And the activity ramped up every time the people would leave. I had like 3 weekends in a row of guests. Finally, I had my biologist who came, and she's lovely because she knows how to, it's all about energy. She's got cool energy. She's mellow. She's not all, blah, blah. She's not going to try to rile anyone up and have an experience, but other people were. So, anyway.
So how do you think these creatures seems like an inadequate term. They're not animals. They're obviously have higher order thinking and powers. You might say powers, senses. What's your theory about how they are able to affect electricity or your thinking? I mean, this is some incredible influence that they have on humans, or is it some sort of censorship that we impose upon ourselves? Or, I mean, what do you think is happening there in your experience?
For me, I'm wide open because I just am. And that's how I was born. I am an animal communicator as well, which means I do readings for horses, and I've done readings for horses, chickens, goats, cats, and dogs always. But I'm the person that the way animals think is in pictures, and I'm used to that. I'm used to that form of communication. And so, for example, I was at a party recently and my friend brought her giant dog in that I'd never met, but they know animals just know, oh, it's you. They know, oh, you can talk to me. I just get that. They come in and they're like, oh, I just caught his eyes. He came and sat down on me. He was a giant, like husky Samoyed mix. And I said, so what's new with you? What's new in your world? I just said it in my head because I'm not going to say that in front of everybody. And he looks at me and he goes, Mom cooks fish. I go, oh, that's cool. And so I'm like, perfect. I'm going to ask her. And so, his owner, his mom, I said, hey, anything new with your dog recently? Like, are you cooking him fish? And she goes, what? Yes. How'd you know that? I go, he just told me. And she's like, no. I go, yeah, that's how it works. I heard his little voice, Mom cooks fish, but he showed me the picture is the most important thing. He showed me Mom standing in the kitchen from his point of view. Here's Mom, and she's standing there cooking fish, salmon on the stove, and oh, do you want some? And he's all, yes. And that's what I saw. So I'm used to that. And that's how the Sasquatch communicate with me. They'll send pictures mostly, and then maybe a couple of words. It's not like I'm having these super long conversations with them. So anyway, let's philosophize. It's not that. It's with Russell, he's really smart and he's really kind. But the most he's really said is, hey, be careful. Stay out of the canyon. We want more of those. Because like I've left chocolate frosted donuts. I've left odds and ends that, okay, we're not going to eat all these, so I'll just give these to them. They probably like them. And yeah. So
I wonder, how do you think then that because you're so open, your ability to communicate and to maybe to just receive
Yeah.
these vibes, for lack of a better term, do you think that makes your surroundings more, what's the term, malleable, more affected by laws that don't follow the normal rules of physics that the rest of us are used to? Do you think they're able to make you turn off your own lights, or do you think they're directly saying, we're going to turn the lights down now?
Oh no, they're doing that. I don't do that. Yeah.
So but is it the connection you have with them that allows them to do that, do you think?
No.
Or can they just do whatever they want? And if so, how do you suppose that came to be with
Right.
them? Because they seem so primitive, by a lot of standards, but at the same time, if they're working stuff that's effectively magic to us, great evolved scientific minds, how do we reconcile those two things?
I'll tell you, it's all energy, I feel. And so they're masters of manipulating energy. And so our atmosphere, from what I've seen around here, them popping through thin air and popping out, it feels like, what are we living in a hologram? And maybe honestly, and out in the country, the veil's thinner, because I don't know, that's just my theory. That's what it looks like. It looks like a cartoon or something you'd see on TV. Like, how, what? And yes, I've seen a dog man here on this property go into thin air. And I've seen a really weird, like a saber-toothed cat, giant, pop out of the thin air and then disappear again. I've seen these things, and I can't say. I don't know. I just think that there's so much more that we don't know because we're all busy in our cities and this. I just live alone on a mountain, and so I'm outside with my dogs every day. I mean, I do client readings here in my computer, and then I go outside for hours and hours all day, every day. And we walk our land endlessly because I've got a young German Shepherd who needs it. And so you're just in nature 24/7. You start noticing. And that's my wildlife biologist told me that too. She's like, you're a great observer of nature. And when I was young, I wanted to be a wildlife biologist, but I didn't know what is that. I didn't know what that was. And I know about the animal communication just because I grew up with cats and dogs, and I know you're a vet too. So you may have had your own experiences. I do believe every human has the capability of telepathic communication. We just don't use that part of our brain. And it's just pay attention. It has to be quiet, and it has to be, the vibe of energy that you're looking for. But if you know your cat or dog really intimately, owners can always say, oh, I know, they can notice the smallest changes in behavior. You notice, the tiniest things you notice. And so that's how it is with me. I have 4 animals, the 2 cats and 2 dogs, and I know them intimately because it's just me and those guys 24/7. And then outside, it's me and the Sasquatch. And my dogs notice too. And I validate a lot from the dogs. Like, oh, because Wolfie, he's got a great sniffer, and he'll just sit down and start sniffing really hard. And it's so funny because it'll often coincide with my feelings of, I feel like somebody's watching us from right over there. And he'll sit down and look in that direction. So I don't know. I just think there's so much more that we have to learn about science, nature. And when you're in a quiet, remote place, you get to observe a lot more.
I guess one of the things I think of is how, and this dovetails with what Marty's saying. You mentioned David Paulides there not too long ago.
Yeah.
So David Paulides went to some kind of I'm not sure, he went to some kind of a event where he's going to talk about Sasquatch, and he wanted to talk about some of the more esoteric, some of the more paranormal aspects of Sasquatch. And I was actually talking to Dave about this. He actually got death threats from people who didn't want him to talk about that kind of stuff. So I guess as I'm listening to you talk about this, how wrong science, modern science, and I'm thinking of people who would say that Sasquatch is nothing more than a relic hominid, how wrong they've got it.
Yeah.
That they're really out in left field. They think they're not, but they are. Because I mean, you're experiencing something different. So the question I have for Marty here is, how much of your experience where you live with, and I'm happy to hear that you mentioned, because you have talked about the dog men before and maybe the saber-tooth critter. How much of that is you versus where you live? Have you reflected upon that?
No, not me. It's not me. Those things, my husband had seen. My mom and my husband both have had UFO experiences here, and all three of us have had. My husband, I witnessed him having a Sasquatch experience in that area that I talked about. Right out the kitchen window, I'm looking at him, and he's with our other big dogs, and they all surrounded him, but we couldn't see them again, but they were going woohoo, woohoo, woohoo all around him, like messing with him. And he's a big guy. I mean, he's 6'4", 250. And he looks at the window like, he's like, "Are you doing this?" I'm like, "No, I don't do that. How can I do that?" And I was like, and he goes, "What?" And I'm like, "I don't know, man." And we thought at that time, that was right before I had my big, let me show you the ceremony experience. And so we thought it was Menahunis. That's what we call them. These little forest people, because the voices were coming from the ground. They were coming from the trees. They were messing with him. Like they encircled him in a big circle, and we heard voice over there, voice over there. I mean, they were just messing with him. And my dogs were just terrified. They were like, "What?" They just sat down right at his feet. And I watched the whole thing happen. He comes in, he goes, "I think that was the Menahunis." I go, "I don't know. That's really weird," because it was so loud. It was so deep. The voices were clearly not real owls, and they sounded like they're coming from high up. Some of them, but some of them sounded like they're coming from the ground. Oh, and that's what happened to my wildlife biologist. When she was here, she went out. I was taking a nap inside. I had all my animals in my bedroom with the door shut with me. She had her dog outside with her. Beautiful summer day. She's out meditating under the tree. I'm taking a nap inside again. All animals shut in the bedroom with me. So she starts hearing my little dog Jerry barking up a storm at the front door, which he does do sometimes. But he was again dead asleep upstairs with me. So she's outside, and she was getting she's super polite, and she kept coming over to the door like, "Oh, I better calm Jerry down because Marty's going to wake up, and I want her to get some rest." And it wasn't. It was 15 minutes, a half hour of that, and every time she went over there, she set her pop down. They came over and knocked it off right in front of her. She was watching it happen. So it goes on, but no, it's not me. I was asleep and upstairs, and so were my dogs and cats were with me. And she came in, or I went out after I got up. It was like 20 minutes later. I'm like, "Hey, I'm up." And she goes, "Oh God, did Jerry wake you up with all that barking?" I go, "No, he was in bed sleeping with me." She goes, No, he was barking at the door." I'm like, "Nope." And she went, "Oh God." She goes, "Can they do that?" I said, "Yeah, they do that all the time." They would do that when I take Wolfie out, because Jerry sometimes does sit and complain at the front door. "Rawr, rawr, not fair. I've got the big dog and not him." And but many times I've come back to go, "Darn it, Jerry, what are you doing? I can't just drop Wolfie." And I come back and he's asleep upstairs.
Hmm.
So they like to mess around with like, ha ha, the mimicking and the imitations. After everyone left, I had 3 solid days of just they were just messing with me, making every noise known to man. That you hear car doors slamming. You'd hear it sounded like I had car after car after car coming up the gravel driveway, and then of course you look out and no one's there. The usual story. And then running around the house at night, hitting the side of the house, screaming, going, monkey screams. And I'm like, I got up my gumption one night, the third night of that, because I was like, I'm terrified. They were really mad because all these people have been here. So I went out at 3 a.m. and I just said, stop. And I stood on my porch and I just said, I don't know why you're doing this. I have an idea. Clearly, someone was irritated that all these guests have been coming and going. It's not going to happen again. One of them went into the canyon when I told her not to. So that was what they were really mad about. Like, what are you doing? All these people coming and going. We don't like it. And so I did an apology ceremony, and it stopped.
Hmm.
So after that, Russell came back and things were a lot more even keeled. Anyway.
You and I have had this discussion before, and I don't know to what degree you'd want to do this, but and Dave's familiar with this too. There's something every fall, and it usually happens around Thanksgiving time at Quinault Beach Resort. They have a Sasquatch summit. And I think your story about your experiences there where you live would just be mind blowing for people to hear. Now, that's my spin on it, not your spin on it. And I think I gave you a name of somebody that
Yeah.
you contact.
I did. I emailed that guy. I didn't hear anything back.
Really,
Yes. And I emailed Mike Patterson. I've tried to contact him a few times, never heard anything back.
Hmm.
So I don't know if people are suspicious, like, who's this? What's she want? I don't, you're the only show I'm going on now to talk about any of this, because I know you, I trust you. I know that you trust me. You know, I'm not a weirdo making stuff up. There's no point. And I really came to the conclusion, like I said at our MUFON meeting not long ago, I don't want to talk about it publicly anymore because I don't want people coming here and trying to have their own experiences. I don't want to upset the nice ones that I have a relationship with. I feel an obligation to Russell and his nephew and their little group. I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't want to push you in
Maybe.
any direction you don't want to go. And maybe it's for that individual that I told you to contact. Maybe it's just too far out for them. Maybe they're,
I think so.
yeah, yeah,
I think it's very wild and it's crazy. I just didn't ever think things like this were possible. It
yeah,
blows my mind, and I'm super open-minded. And I always think, oh, would I believe it if someone came on a show and was talking about this? I'd be incredulous. But you have to know the person, I think.
yeah.
What's fascinating is when I became a psychic and a medium and I had to come out as that, and I grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, graduated high school 82, and my biggest fan group is where I grew up in Vancouver, Washington. Everyone there, and at my reunion, people were coming up to me going, I know that all of this is real, and you've opened my mind so much. They know because they know I'm credible.
Right.
I thought, thank you. Thank you. People who know I don't make stuff up. There's no reason why. I don't need to. I definitely don't need to do any of that, and I don't want to do any of that. And because the other thing is being a woman alone, I just here we are on the internet. I'm talking about I'm a woman alone. So it's just scary. It scares
Yeah.
me that people would come up. If people come all the way up my driveway, there's no reason for them to be here. So I don't know.
Yeah, I get that. And don't take it that I'm trying to push you in any particular
Oh
direction.
yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
But I
Anyway,
think it'd be cool too. I'd love to hear these stories too. I'm
yeah.
hungry for other people who are having these experiences. I've read some really interesting books online. I can't remember the guy's name now, but he's a Bigfoot researcher out of like Oklahoma or maybe the South. And he wrote some books and he said, well, there's people who've had one or two Sasquatch experiences, and then there's the habituators.
Hmm.
And that's what he calls people like me, Mike Patterson.
Mhm.
I'm actively leaving them food. My wildlife biologist friend was saying, you better not leave them food. I know you're going to, because she was thinking bears would get it.
Yeah, bears.
Or I'm attracting, other wildlife. But what's fascinating about that is no. I told my friend Russell that. I said, hey, my friend says I shouldn't leave you this food. And I'm scared too. And that's why I wanted to put cameras out originally, because I bought cameras to put out there because I do live on an ancient game trail and we have wildlife all over all the time. And so do I want to be feeding them? No. And so I told Russell that and he just laughed. I said, but don't you think they could get it if he said no? It was just like, no. And I said, well, but who's to say a bear wouldn't? He just said, I say no.
No.
So it's like they're known. And
Mhm.
it's a certain tree. I bought a Sasquatch. I've marked it with the Sasquatch. They know that's their tree. That's the tree he told me to leave things at. And it's been going on for years now. And I just once a week hang food up high, as high as I can go, but I climb up and I collect the garbage. They leave behind the plastic bags and they fold them up and they tuck them in the tree branches. Bears don't do that. I know that. Yeah.
Well, I would once again like to thank you for spending part of your day with us. You've got other things to do and other people to relate to, but I find you a very interesting guest and I was appreciative of you coming back on our show. Dave, do you have any final thoughts there for Marty?
Well, I'd like to vouch for her abilities as a psychic because I've actually had a reading with Marty, and it was very powerful for me and helpful.
Oh, good.
And I don't know if you're still doing readings for just anybody, or if it's
Yep.
but what kind of contact information do you want to share with us so that we can let people know of your talents and your services?
It's my website where you book and pay for a reading. I do private readings all day long, every day. And it's Mardi McCray. There it is right there. MardiMcCray.com.
Okay, MCCRAY.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Glad to
Thank
hear.
you again, Marty.
Thank you
being
for
on with
having me.
us.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you again, too.
Yeah, good to see you.
Okay, thanks, Marty. We'll see you again.
Okay.
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 All right. So I'm gonna take us out of here.
All right. We'll see you next time on Anomalies.
Maybe. There we go.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Bye, Marty.
Bye.
Bye.